Hi everybody, welcome back to our monthly Q&A. So this month I'm addressing the question that I get asked a lot from families when it comes to diets for children with autism or children who are neurodivergent. So I get asked, what is the best diet for autism? And as you probably suspect, the answer is not so clear-cut. Many people do things like gluten-free, dairy-free diet. Some people do a GAPS diet. Other people do autoimmune or anti-inflammatory diets. What I will say is it's really going to depend on your child. And what I can say is what I've seen from multiple diets out there. If we're talking about the general gluten-free, dairy-free diet, I've seen some benefit for some, and I've seen no benefit for others, or I've seen great benefit for others. It's something that is a good thing to trial, I believe, to see if it works for your child, if it helps your child in any ways. It may not do the entire job. It may not do everything you want it to do, but it might do some of it, and that's great. So I think as a standard sort of basic dietary intervention, a gluten-free, dairy-free diet can be an important place to start. And you might actually start with just one of those. You might just go dairy-free first or gluten-free first, because doing both can be challenging. Doing one of those can be very challenging, so it's going to really depend on your family. But I think it's a good place to start. Now, aside from that, I wouldn't necessarily say that's the best diet. I think it's something to trial. The best diet, I think, or the best ways of eating, I think, are really the ones that are tailored to your child's needs. So if you're doing testing and you know what's going on in their gut, and you know what food sensitivities they might have, but also are they digesting things well? If you're doing other supports to support the digestive system, support the immune responses that might ensue, support inflammatory pathways and balancing inflammation in the body, then the diet can look very different, and it might actually broaden what the child can have. I also get a lot of patients in my practice who have very restrictive eating, and that enters into the ring a whole other whack of challenges, right? So elimination diets can often be too restrictive and further restrictive for the child who's only eating 5 foods. And the point is never to starve the child, of course. So what I always say is that the best diet is the one that is geared really uniquely to your unique child's needs. There are, of course, like I mentioned, the gluten-free, dairy-free diet, some standard diets for autism that have been used in the past, might not be entirely sustainable or things that you can maintain for a very long period of time, but it might be. It's going to depend on the family. I also sometimes talk to parents about going a bit lower on the carbohydrates or the refined carbohydrates and focusing more so on good proteins, good fats, vegetables, some fruits, just to get a wide array of foods in the child's diet, and always nutritionally dense as much as possible. So if you think about the high carb foods, grains like rice and the breads and pastas don't have a ton of nutrients in them, and it's not that it has to be completely taken out, but often kids that I see actually have a hard time digesting them, and those foods can actually feed other things going on in the system, some overgrowth and things like this. So just some sort of thoughts on dietary interventions. Other more, I guess, not aggressive, but more intervention type diets that you might consider are things like the GAPS diet. Some families also go to a ketogenic diet, and others might go a little more middle of the road, like a paleo, again, lower carb diet. That's maybe a little bit easier to achieve, but things like ketogenic diet can be considered maybe more of an intervention type diet. So again, something that you might not do for very long, but it might be an intervention if you see a lot of flares in your child's symptoms, in your child's behaviors, in their difficulties. GAPS diet, if you have a GAPS diet practitioner who can walk you through that, or if you know very much about that diet, that can also be an interesting protocol to follow. There are different stages. I'm not an expert in it, but I've seen some really good benefit from it for some of my patients. So it can also be an interesting one to look into. With any of these things that I mention, always it's best to be speaking to a practitioner who's skilled and knows a lot about working with the neurodivergent gut and nervous system and child, just to ensure you're doing everything safely as much as possible, and that you are addressing the child's unique needs. So that's what I'll say about perfect diets, that there is no perfect, or, you know, perfect being, of course, highly nutrient dense foods as much as possible, but that may be a challenge for your child. But if these things, if getting nutrient dense foods into your child is a problem, is a challenge, if there's more restriction, like truly, maybe it's picky eating, or maybe it's truly very, very highly restrictive eating, then I urge you to investigate deeper and make sure that there isn't something deeper going on in the gut that we shouldn't be addressing. And if that's the case, then you got to address those things. And diet, the palate for what the child will eat will actually change somewhat naturally on its own. So yeah, anyway, that's what I will say about diets, and I hope you found that useful. If you have questions or comments, or you've had experiences yourselves with specific dietary protocols that you want to mention, please feel free to send us an email. It's always going to be, it's always good learning for me, and it's always great to, you know, help shape NeuroKids and what content we put out there. Plus also sharing with other parents can be also very helpful. So, okay, see you in the next monthly Q&A.